Hi guys, I'm Ahana and welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my top tips for the YC application. If that sounds good to you, then keep on watching. Before I jump into this video, I want to give my usual disclaimer that I'm not affiliated with nor represent YC and all thoughts in this video are totally my own. And I'll also caveat this video by disclosing that I'm not involved in any way in the YC admissions process. But over the last couple of weeks, a lot of you have been sharing your YC applications with me to review. As someone who's gone through YC myself, I of course have submitted my own application, and having gone through so many other people's applications in the past couple of weeks, I started to notice a couple of common mistakes that people would make, and equally there were some things that really made certain applications stand out, and I figured I'd share that in this video. So first, I'm going to talk about the 5 common mistakes that I often see in the YC written application, and after that, I'll be sharing my top 5 tips when it comes to writing your own. So without further ado, let's dive right in. The first common mistake that I see a lot of the time is too many buzzwords. Oftentimes, founders might think that using a lot of buzzwords might make them look super knowledgeable and like they really know the field that they're working in. But you have to put it in perspective. YC are going to be reading many applications at one go. And if they don't fully understand what the buzzword is or why it's been used, and perhaps there could have been a more accurate descriptor of what you're doing, in most cases, using a buzzword is a big no-no. Just explain as clearly and as simply as you can. Along the same vein, stay away from acronyms. Remember that they're going to be reading hundreds and hundreds of applications, and you want to make their job as easy as possible. So don't use buzzwords and don't use acronyms. The second common mistake that I often see is people not providing a TAM calculation, or if they do provide a TAM or how big this idea could get, the number's just not big enough. Y Combinator are the type of investors that want to invest in big ideas. So if you can prove that you have a good shot at building the next big company, that's going to bode really well for you on your application. However, if you do a basic revenue in the next year calculation, you're not necessarily giving yourself the best chance to show just how large this market is and how much money you can really make. So 1, make sure you put a TAM calculation in there, and 2, ideally aim for a market that's around $1 billion or larger. The third common mistake I often see on YC applications is the founder that's filled out the application form has not actually answered the questions. Now, of course, this sounds obvious, but I think you'd actually be surprised that sometimes it's easier to get sidetracked or talk about something else that you'd rather show off than answering the question that's being asked directly. This can kind of come across badly for 2 reasons. The first is that it can kind of make it seem like you can't articulate yourself clearly or answer questions directly. And the second reason is that sometimes when people don't give direct answers, it's because they're trying to cover something up or compensate. And that's not the impression that you want to give the person reading your application. The fourth common mistake is showing no evidence of hustle. And what I mean by that is oftentimes I'll see founders name drop their universities that they've gone to or the places that they've had jobs at. And while that's great, and I guess there's some social proof in there, being great in a big company or having gone to a top university does not correlate to startup founder success. However, something that does correlate to success as a founder is showing that you're just the type of person that gets things done. And if that's what you can show a track record of in your application, that will actually make a far stronger application than someone who just name drops places that they've been to. If you do really want to talk about the places that you've worked or the universities that you attended, then say specifically what value you added and how you went above and beyond. Tell them something that not just anyone at that university or job could do. Show how you were different and were able to bring things to life. And the fifth and final common mistake that I see is people giving generic answers. Again, this application is about proving why you and your company should go through YC. And if you're going to give an answer to a question that anyone can give, that's not going to move the needle for them. So even for questions on the application, like why are you applying to Y Combinator? Give them an answer that not everyone could give. Why are you in a particularly special situation in which you can leverage their resources better than anyone else? Why are you the right team, and why are you bringing your idea to the market at this specific time? I think YC even asks you to give a unique insight on the problem that you're solving. They are asking you to show what you know that not everyone does. And so many founders don't use that opportunity to show off their knowledge and their domain expertise. Use that question as an opportunity to really show off your unfair advantage on working on the problem that you're solving. Okay, so those were the 5 common mistakes that I often see on people's applications. Now, I'm going to walk you through some of my top tips. So the first one is to be clear and concise. I know I already alluded to this point by saying no buzzwords or acronyms, but I really want to drill home the point that the people in the YC admissions team are going to be reading so many applications, and some of the time the applications can be so poorly written that it's hard to even follow what the idea is, let alone the intricacies of the company. You want to make their job as easy as possible, and that in turn will improve your chances. So be clear, be concise, don't use jargon, don't use acronyms, don't use buzzwords. A good way to think about it is if you have to explain what you're building to your grandma, how would you do that? It's certainly not about patronizing the reader or dumbing things down. It's just about finding the most effective way of communicating something. And oftentimes, the simplest way of communicating an idea is the most powerful and the most straightforward. Also on this is the fact that you should never leave the reader not knowing where a statistic came from or making them do extra maths to make an inference. You should give them all of the data up front, say where it's come from, and make them do as little work as possible when actually reading your application. So many times I've seen founders go from saying how much they're charging their user to what their TAM is going to be, whereas they haven't actually said what the numbers in between in that calculation are or shown that calculation up front. I'd strongly encourage that you do that. My second top tip is to nail your one-liner. At the very start of your application, you get the opportunity to say what it is that you're building. And this is the first impression that YC are going to have of you and your company. The reason this question in particular is so important is that 1, not only does it actually tell the reader what you're building, but 2, it actually sets the tone for the rest of your application. If you've provided a really clear, descriptive, concise one-liner, chances are the person reading your application is actually interested and inclined to learn more about it. However, the one-liners that I've seen that just are totally undescriptive or using way too many complex jargon words, it's actually a lot less inviting to read those applications because you're just grappling trying to figure out what it actually is that this person's building. And sometimes you can get halfway through the application and it still might not be clear. So it's definitely worth putting time into your one-liner, and it's always an iterative process. Companies are always evolving their one-liners and bouncing it off friends, families, mentors, advisors, and I would strongly encourage that you do the same. My third top tip is to really think deeply about your answers. Now again, this might sound like an obvious one, and I really do not want this to come across as condescending, but having read through quite a few applications at this point, it really seems like sometimes founders writing the application are pouring all of this time and mental energy into the application, but not really putting that much time or thought into each individual answer. Again, this application is an opportunity for you to show off your intellect and how you think about problems, and that can be quite easily seen from the quality of an answer. Some answers can be quite surface level and superficial, whilst others go into much more detail and almost show how a person thinks, if they're a logical thinker, if they make data-driven decisions. All of these are things that you can weave into your story and weave into the application, and make sure that you don't waste that opportunity. For each question, make sure you give a detailed and thought through answer. Even for the ones that you think might not matter, such as why are you applying to YC or where did you learn about us, show that you've gone above and beyond. Show that you're a hustler and you like to learn information and act on it. My fourth top tip is to make sure you highlight your traction and achievements. Numbers are really hard to argue with, and if you have a proven track record of delivering, and particularly delivering in a short amount of time, these are the kind of indicators that YC see as very positive, and I think for most companies that are able to demonstrate having achieved something. One of the hardest parts of being a startup founder is just showing up and getting things done. And if you can prove that you're able to do that and prove that you're able to do things in a short amount of time and quickly and make big decisions effectively when under time pressure, that again speaks really well for you as a founder. Make sure you highlight that in your application. And my fifth and final top tip is to ask a YC alumni to proofread your application before you submit it. Now, I'm guilty. This is actually not something that I did when I was applying, but I've already made a video about our application story, so check that out if you haven't already. Long story short, I did not expect to get in whatsoever, and hence I didn't even think it was worth wasting other people's time reading our application. I don't think my own team members even read the application that I submitted to YC. But now on the other side, as someone that's gone through the process, I've probably reviewed around 20 applications just this week alone. And the reason that I'm willing to put time into that is, one, I had fantastic people that helped me when I was on the other side of the coin. But secondly, I think just having seen more applications, I'm actually able to give decent feedback to the people whose applications I read. And most YC founders are pretty giving and will do the same thing for you. So don't be afraid, reach out. Of course, as with everything in life, there will be some rejections. Also made a video on that. But do your part. Send messages on LinkedIn, send messages on Twitter. You just need a couple or even one person to say yes, to give your application a look over, and you'll be good to go. So that's all for this video. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any other tips or questions about the online application process for Y Combinator, please feel free to leave your questions in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content just like this, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. Alright, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.